everyone, and welcome to More Than Medals by Crossing the Line. Today we're going to be speaking with Shelby Newkirk, who's an incredible para swimmer and also a great friend of mine. Shelby started her swimming journey at the same club that I started my para swimming journey in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Not only is Shelby an incredibly accomplished swimmer and a pretty crafty crocheter, but she's also an amazing advocate for the disabled community. I'm so excited for you to hear the way that she advocates and speaks about our community. Without further ado, here's Shelby Newkirk. Shelby Newkirk is a Paris 2024 Paralympic bronze medalist in the 100-meter backstroke. I heard that all the cool girls got bronze medals in Paris, so that's why Shelby is here to prove that that's true. In 2022 and 2023, Shelby became a world champion in 100-meter backstroke, which is pretty amazing and has set some pretty incredible records for Canada and also for the world. She won a silver medal and a bronze medal at World Championships in 2019 and 2023, so fair to say that Shelby is a pretty decorated swimmer. Shelby and I met, actually our paths sort of crossed, as Shelby was previously had trained with Paris Storm Swim Club, which is a swim club in Winnipeg, Manitoba, that I trained with when I was very first injured. So this club really taught me how to swim and took me from being not really confident that I wasn't going to drown, to having a sense of how to competitively swim. And then ultimately I transitioned into triathlon. And Shelby at the club was that person that people would show me her videos and tell me about her and tell me her story and be like, if you do this, you could be like Shelby. And then ultimately it was so cool for us to meet a few years later and then cross paths at Paris 2024. I feel like it was just such a full circle moment to see you there. And I really felt very fangirl toward you always. And so then to be at the same games as you and to be on the same team, I was like, this is really just the coolest. And so thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to get to know you a little better today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Let's start from the beginning. What were you like as a kid?
So I've always been a very busy person. I've loved to kind of be doing something at all times. There's not really a moment I'm sitting still. And I did a lot of sports growing up. That was kind of a big part of my identity, who I was. My whole family has kind of been involved in sports. My mom played university basketball. My brother did. So growing up, I did soccer, basketball, volleyball, track, pretty much everything, except swimming, honestly. I did a little bit of swimming lessons, but otherwise I was pretty much busy, mostly doing team sports, club, school, kind of a little bit of everything.
It's actually interesting to hear a lot of people say who ended up going on to para sports individually that they did team sports growing up. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that the people who say that, I'm like, oh, that really tracks actually. Those kind of team oriented people, even when they move on to individual sport, you can kind of feel that they have that sense of passing the sport on and that sort of team spirit, sort of.
Yeah.
Even when they're doing individual sport, which I think is actually really cool. So you weren't born with your disability. Can you talk a little bit about what your impairment was and maybe sort of starting from the beginning as to how you became aware of it?
Mm-hmm. So I have early onset generalized dystonia, which is basically a really long title, but it's kind of broken up into parts. So mine is early onset. I was diagnosed at 13, but I did have quite a few signs before. So for me, the main thing that we realized, there's something big going on here, was when my right foot completely locked. So dystonia causes involuntary movements, muscle contractions. So instead of my muscles working opposite, they all pull at the same time, causing fixed posturing, some of that kind of stuff. So I've had problems with my neck my whole life. I've had pain my whole life. But it wasn't until I was 13 where it really started to progress. And when this happened, I had to start using mobility devices full time. I started using crutches because I couldn't weight bear on my right leg anymore. And I couldn't do any of those sports anymore. And in the progress of trying to figure out what was happening and figure out, where I was, just as far as where my community lied, all this kind of stuff. I was very fortunate to find sport because it really helped me along that way. But I feel like my disability is kind of different, where it wasn't just, there's one thing that happens, this is my disability, learn to live with it. For me, it's been a progressive condition. So It's progressed ever since I was 13. I now use a wheelchair full time. My arms are significantly impaired now. My face, my speech, my swallowing, everything is impaired at this point. So I think I've kind of had to come to terms with where it was, and then, oh, something changed. Oh, now I find out I'm out of treatment options, all these kind of things. So it's kind of been adjusting to it over time, and just, it hasn't been fun to navigate through for all these years, but I think I'm in a good place now.
Yeah, I can imagine how much more difficult it is to deal with that sort of changing baseline because, for myself, I have a spinal cord injury and it was a distinct sort of understandable occurrence, like I had an accident, it caused an injury. This is kind of the state. And I think one of the hardest parts is sort of that battle you have in the beginning for a lot of people with spinal cord injuries between like trying to walk again and trying to regain some function, and then ultimately accepting when it's right for you to say like, I'm happy with this amount of function. I don't need to continue to pursue that.
Yes.
And so I can imagine it's difficult to not know where it's almost like if you could have, I'm curious about this. If you could know what your progression would be like, would you want to know that? Like, would that be helpful, or is it better not, do you think?
That's a good question. I think at the beginning, especially, I didn't want to know what was going to happen. And I think it was really good because the people in my life didn't tell me right away that this was going to be permanent. They didn't tell me that this was most likely progressive.
Right.
And I think originally, like, I was a teenager. I was just a kid when this was all happening. Yeah. And I think I was kind of in that point of like, why didn't somebody warn me? But now looking back, I'm really glad that I didn't have that, because it let me kind of take it in smaller steps instead of having everything change at once. It was like people could kind of test out like how I was going to react, and they could kind of get me like, okay, this is how it is, and I can kind of just take it in smaller pieces. I feel like now I have such a great team, like between physios and neurologists and all these kind of things, that all these great professionals that really help me understand so that we can plan ahead as well. And I feel like now I'm in that place, but definitely as a teenager trying to go into high school and figure out all this, it definitely would have been too much at that time.
Yeah, no kidding. I feel like being 13 is hard enough, like truly. It's just hard anyway. And yeah, like it's wild how much you have to unpack at that age. And it's really interesting that you say that it was presented to you in that way. I think that would be so hard for your parents to decide, like in what way to present that information to you. And I think like they're processing as well. And I think when we're younger, we have this idea that our parents are like, know everything and know what to do and have all these plans. And then the closer I get to potentially being a parent, the more I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I don't know what to do. And it kind of gives you that, like, for me anyway, that sense of like empathy, like they didn't know, they had no idea.
Yeah, it was definitely a hard time for everybody. And I think looking back, my parents kind of protected me from knowing, like even how much they were unsure of it all, because I could kind of look to them and see them as my rock. Like when all the scary stuff was happening, they were always there. Meanwhile, I'm sure they were freaking out, but I'm glad that I had them in my corner. Like you said, I started my swimming at Para Storm. And Karen there was so good. Like she recognized what was happening, and she's been a good family friend ever since I started swimming. So she also helped in that journey, and I've been so fortunate to have all these amazing people around my life to really help make that easier.
I think the unique thing about Karen as a coach, like she was the first coach that I worked with in person, like one-on-one. And I think that she is so in touch with mental health for athletes, which I don't even think I really appreciated at the time. At the time, I was like, I'm just here to swim. Like, why are you worried about this? Like, I don't think that I even had like the wisdom to understand how important that was. And then I look back on like those years of like learning how to swim and learning the sport and how integrated mental health is, especially in para, but I think in sport in general. And so I think it's so cool that she is so in tune with that. And I feel like a lot of what she learned from you and then went on to apply those kinds of things to working with me and working with other athletes. So I think it's so cool how in para, I do always feel like the sport is like so passed down from like one person to the next. And I always really feel that when I think about like my journey in sport and what it was like for me. So thanks for
Yeah.
being that person.
Oh, thanks.
So do you then, like, your disability will continue to progress? And a question that I have kind of related to that is, we have talked about this in general in the podcast, but I'll explain it again for people who don't know. But in parasport, we get classified. And so classification is the process of like assessing our disability, and they put us into a group to compete against who have the same sort of physical capabilities based on their impairment. And so as a result of having a progressive disability, you're getting reclassified, I would
Yes.
assume. Can you talk about that? Like what that's like?
Yeah. So it's a little bit different with every sport. With swimming, typically you get like the different levels of classification. Once you get your international, if somebody is, say, an amputee or they have a disability that's not going to change, it's not going to progress, typically they get internationally classified. If they turn 18 after that, then they have to be classified again. But once they've kind of done those steps, then they get a confirmed and they don't have to worry about it after that. Since my disability is progressive, I have to go pretty much every 1 to 2 years. And with paraswimming, we don't have any classification opportunities currently in Canada. So that involves traveling to Australia or Italy or Spain or any of these places every year. For me, I typically have to bring somebody with me as well as an assist. So it takes a little bit more of, oh, where am I going this year? What's going to happen? And these classifications have to take part during a competition as well, so they can watch you compete, which I think is similar to a lot of sports.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just kind of one of those things. And I think it's also that mental side of it every time, where every time I go in, even though I think I'm okay with how my body's progressed, I know it's happening. I can feel it all the time. But once you go in and you actually hear them saying the numbers, it does kind of give you that little bit of a reality check of how much has really changed in a year or two. So I've worked really closely with my coaches, with my team, with mental performance, all these kind of things, just to be okay with the side of it of hearing what's actually changed. Because while I can see it happening, hearing it from another source is a whole nother ballgame sometimes.
Yeah, that's such a unique challenge that, like, for myself, I had actually not, I had an unfortunate first experience being classified. And I think classification is complicated because as much as like people sort of see para athletes as like comfortable with their disabilities and confident and all of these things, which I feel like mostly I am, in the setting of like classification and certain things, I feel like all that goes out the window. When someone asks you to, like, I sit on a table and they're like, move your leg, and then I just sit there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is so awkward. Like, I feel so awkward. And then they sort of like, because they're human, they look like a little bit sad. I mean, or I don't know, it feels like they do. And then you're like, oh, like it's not a big deal. Like I couldn't move it 5 minutes ago and I wasn't upset about it. But now, like in this setting, I feel a bit weird.
Yeah, having it pointed out. And
yeah, right? Like you think you know it, or like, I don't know if this happens too, but like little kids ask me about my impairment all the time. And so you tell people all the time. And even like, kids ask so plainly, like, what's wrong with you? And then you tell them because they don't know any better and they don't mean it. But still, somehow, in the context of classification, I find it difficult. Do you think that over the years, we have become, as parasport, more sensitive to classification, or do you think it's the same? Or is there something that you would say, like, this would be really good if they knew this or if they did this?
I think the more just people explain from the athlete side, because I know we're able to take an advocate and we're able to have somebody help us out with that kind of stuff. But I think the more we're able to talk about our experiences, because if somebody doesn't have the lived experience, they may not be able to relate in the same way. And I know looking back before I was diagnosed, like 15 years ago or whenever it was now, if I were sitting there doing the same kind of thing, like I wouldn't understand. And so I think just the more that we can advocate for ourselves, advocate for others, and like you said, advocate for that next generation of athletes, just to really bring people aware of what it can be like from the athlete side. Because I know that that's something that I've definitely had to kind of deal with. And like you said, it might not bother you at all. And then just having somebody point it out. I have the same kind of thing where I have kids ask me all the time and I'm always fine with it. But sometimes if I'm just having a rough day and it's been over and over and over again, people asking, and sometimes adults will ask and sometimes they don't ask in very nice ways. And even that sometimes gets to me. So I think that the more that we can change the general public's view of disability and really advocate for ourselves and others, I think hopefully that change will come.
Yeah, I think that that's so helpful and so relevant. And I kind of want to dive into that a little bit more in terms of like the public's sense of disability and how they talk about it. And I watched a video that you had done with the Saskatoon government, I believe, and it's kind of old. It's from 2021, but I feel like it's still, I watched it and I was like, yeah, girl, like super relevant. And you talked about how people sort of view disabled people and sometimes express this kind of pity and how sort of horrible that feels, honestly. And I really agree with that and resonate with that people would look at you. And I think this is why it's the worst, because you say like, I'm transferring into the pool and I'm like pretty proud of myself that I can do it by myself. Like, I'm like, heck yeah, like I worked for this and I can do this at this point in my life. And I feel good about that. But then maybe someone comes and watches you and is like, oh, do you need help? Like, I feel bad that you have to do it that way. And they're like really insisting that you need help when you're like, oh, like a minute ago, this was like a source of like pride for me. And now I feel kind of embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, do you have examples of things where you're like, oh, when you do this, humans of the world, I don't like it. And if you did it this way, it would be better. Like, can you think of something like that?
Yeah. So I've taught for years. I was teaching online for a while there, and I found when I was teaching online, people don't really realize that I have a disability. They didn't notice. And I just found the difference in people viewing me as somebody that they viewed as not having a disability to then being viewed at the pool or when I'm in a coaching role or I'm the para-program coordinator for our club now. And I found sometimes just people would treat me so much differently. And I thought that was really interesting of when I'm online, people can't tell that I have my wheelchair right beside me. They can't tell. A lot of times people were more willing to listen to what I had to say. And then as soon as they saw me in a chair, then they were assuming that I needed more help. They were assuming me at like a lower capacity to take part in what we were doing to be able to help. And I always find that kind of interesting because I'm the same person. Like I'm able to do the same kind of things. And when I'm at the pool, I help set up. I pull the lines across the pool. I help set up the flags. When I'm coaching, I'm able to run big groups and it doesn't really affect. And I think it's just great to be able to be in those positions at the pool and when I'm doing coordinating and stuff for parents and kids to see like, oh yeah, my coach is in a wheelchair and she does everything just the same. Like she'll get in the water with us. She'll show us how to move. And I think it's a really cool experience to just be able to show kids from an early point. Some of my youngest kids are 3 to just really show them that like this is possible. And I think it's kind of normalizing it a bit. So I have kids that are coming up now and they're like, oh yeah, like some people walk with crutches, some people walk with prosthetics, some people use wheelchairs, some don't have arm. Like it's more natural. So I think the more we can get out in the public and just really show people like it's just life. We're just people living our lives, doing our thing. And I think that's a really cool thing to show.
I love the way that kids react. And I think in some ways they're so flexible to learning. So I feel like they're more comfortable with like accepting disability because I think they go through life like every day not knowing what things are and what's going on. So when they learn something new, they're just like, oh, it's this, like it's fine. Yes. So recently, one of my nephews asked me about why I use a wheelchair and I explained to him. And then the next time my husband and I went over to their house, he was like, why doesn't Scott use a wheelchair? I just thought it was the best. He was like, oh, like you use it and it helps you to get around. Like he's trying to get around. Like, wouldn't it be better if he had one too? And I just thought it was so like funny and wholesome, but also like so spot on of like the mentality that I would want people to have is that like, if for whatever reason it was easier for anybody to get around in a wheelchair, then like, why would they not? Like, I just thought that was really cool. Yeah. And I love that you're exposing kids to that because I do think like, over time, our comfort and our exposure to these things is improving. And I think we see that in that newer generation of people who are more comfortable with disability or more comfortable with how to talk about it or how to ask questions, or that they can ask questions in the right way.
Yes.
I think that's awesome. And I feel like your students are so lucky to have like you showing them that, but that not being the purpose of why you're there.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When you talk about your Zoom experience, or like your virtual experience, that so resonated with me because during COVID, our business I work for bought another business.
Oh yeah.
And so I work with them really closely, and I had for years. And because it was COVID and we weren't traveling, like none of them knew that I was a wheelchair user until I went to the Paralympics.
Yeah.
And then it was such a funny shift. Yeah. Like that being how people find out. And I feel like in some ways, like, because I personally think the Paralympics is cool, I was like comfortable with them finding out in that way.
Yeah.
But then I wondered, like, would I feel less comfortable had they found out another way? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I feel like I appreciated the situation that I was in, but then it also kind of made me think about, like, what about people who that's not necessarily, like, because you can say something positive about someone going to the Paralympics.
Yes.
But when you just find out that someone's disabled, and in this kind of culture, people sometimes, like you said, feel pity or feel awkward about it.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have the same reaction. And I think it's kind of a shame, but it just sort of made me like really realize that, like, it is such a big switch for people to flip between being like Shelby, the non-disabled person, to Shelby, the disabled person, even though you're the same person.
Still Shelby. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really cool working with my kiddos at the pool, because a lot of times kids will come up to me and they're like, oh, like, what's wrong with your legs? Why do you use a chair? And I'll explain. And then their next sentence, they're like, okay, cool. Well, what are we doing now? Like, it's just so like, cool. Like, awesome. You explained it. I'm happy now. And I definitely had, like, even from 15 years ago where I was first diagnosed, I definitely can see a shift in like the public's perception. I think we still got a ways to go, but I think every little bit helps. I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, that's cool to hear you say that. I had a really similar story with kids, like the best series of questions I was ever asked. I was also at the pool, and a kid said to me, how are you going to swim? And so I explained it. And then I was in Saskatchewan at the time, and they said, how are you going to get in your truck? And I was like, oh, well, I don't drive a truck, so I don't have this problem. And then they said to me, because I was with Scott, they said to me, is that your boyfriend? I was like, I love this pivot. And then they said, do you like him? I was like, cool. I like that we have our priorities here. Like, you're curious about my disability, but also more curious about my boyfriend.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, which is fair. Yeah.
I have had the chance through this podcast to talk to a lot of people who acquired their disabilities a lot younger than me. And so one of the things that is interesting to me, a lot of them had talked about what it's like growing up, and how different kids react to you and what it's like for you socially. What was it like for you socially? You're 13 and you're sort of learning all this information about yourself, and then also going through like the single most awkward stage of life. What was it like?
Yeah. So I think for me, since my identity had so been tied to all these sports I'd been doing my whole life, to suddenly, like, it seemed overnight to not be able to participate in any of those, have to change, not be able to walk how I used to, have to use mobility devices, have to use the elevator at school, not be able to do all these different things. I think the biggest loss, honestly, was my sense of community, because I'd gone from being with the team. I was always doing those kind of activities, and now I was sitting at home. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't really feel like I belonged. I was the only person in my entire grade that had any kind of physical impairment. And it was really like isolating and a little bit lonely to be in that situation. And I think for me, my parents recognized pretty fast that that was not going to be a good place for me, being from so busy all the time, needing to be doing stuff, to kind of sitting on the couch, not knowing what I could do. They looked for other options right away. And my mom was actually chatting with somebody at work, and she's like, oh yeah, well, my mom said I'd like to get my daughter into sport, but she has this disability. I don't know what she can do. And the person she was chatting with had just come back from a swim trip. And my mom's like, maybe swimming would be a good fit, but I don't know if that's even possible. None of us knew about the Paralympics at this point. And the other person on the phone goes, well, that's what I do. I coach athletes with a disability. And that's how we met Karen. Mom had known her for years, but didn't know that that's what she did. And I got out to the pool that first time, and just the sense of I wasn't alone anymore. Everybody had like either mobility devices or some kind of impairment, and it wasn't the end all be all. It was just, that's what happens. Like some people have impairments, some people don't. It was just so natural to fit into that. And I honestly loved it, getting to do that competitive spirit. And I really invested all my time into swimming right there. And then I said, this is what I love to do. This is what I want to do. And obviously still doing it quite a few years later. So it's worked out. But I think just having that sense of community really helped, because I didn't feel like I had that anywhere else. I felt pretty lost everywhere else. And then through sport, I was able to build up the confidence to show myself elsewhere. And I was like, okay, I'm confident at the pool. I feel like I'm at home. I feel safe. Now, how can I make that happen in my school environment? And I think it was a lot of just educating people and understanding that there's some things that are harder now, and I can adjust to this. I can work with others and just kind of teach people, which as a 13-year-old, you don't really want to have to do. But once again, I had great people around me that really helped me figure that out, so I didn't have to do all of it, at least.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so brave. Like when I was injured, I was 25. And even then I was like, this is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard, like socially, and to things like when I'm at a party, if people are really tall, and my husband is 6'5" and plays baseball. And so like his community is really tall.
Yeah.
I can't hear the guys ever.
Yeah.
And so that like it took some time for me to be confident enough to be like, you're either going to need to like sit down, like get a chair and sit down, or like kneel, or like scream, because I cannot hear you. And in little things like that, like it doesn't seem like a big thing, but little things like that make you unique or are hard to ask for. And I feel like it really takes time. And then that one specifically, like I never even thought to ask anyone to do anything about it. I was just like, oh, I'm just going to be at this party, like down here by myself. And then one of my friends' husbands would like kneel to talk to me. And I was like, oh, like I can ask for this. Like people can do this. Like you'll live. And if you get tired of it, you'll like get up, like, and I think it's like, like at 13, like I barely had that confidence, like as an adult. So as a kid, like that really is like, it's a high bar to jump, but I think it's cool that over time, and especially through parasport, you were able to reach that place where you could ask for what you needed.
Yes. Yeah. And I think one of the other cool things about parasport is that you can learn from others. Like you can learn those tips and tricks from others. And even if they are changing, you have to implement them later. I think just the team that I've been able to build around me to figure out these kind of things, figure out what kind of zipper pulls are available to make things easier. I know when we first met, we chatted about chairs and like all the different things that we liked about different chairs and what we didn't, and how we could like figure out a chair that worked for us. And I think having those people to talk about those kind of things is so nice, because they can show you like, hey, yeah, you can totally tell somebody to sit down. Like, it's allowed to do that.
When you're with people in the community, you start to realize that it's acceptable to have this like higher standard of like what's okay for a disabled person. So like when I was first injured, I would never have said to an OT, like, I want to look cute in my chair. Like, how do we do that? Because I just would have thought that's stupid and that's not their job and it's not important. But it is. Like, it is important that if you like that you want to feel confident that you want to look whatever type of way you want to look. And I feel like that kind of thing came from the para community of being able to say to somebody, but like, yeah, but I also want to like look nice in it and feel nice in it.
Yeah.
And I feel like those things are like just such gifts that the community gives by like just sharing them casually with each other.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think I think that fact of just not having to take the bare minimum, not just like, oh, it's accessible enough, we can make this work. Like it's, how can we live the life we want to live? How can we adapt things so it works for us? And I know, like you said, with your chair, it was similar with shoes growing up, because I could never wear cool shoes in high school. I always had to wear these like bulky things that we got adjusted so that they would actually work for my feet. And now I've found a company, Billy Footwear, that makes shoes that work for me. And I'm like, I'm wearing all the loudest fun shoes because I've found ones that work for me. And that sense of not having to have just the bare basics, the bare minimum of something working for you, but actually look for what you want, I think is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think that had a lot to do with, for me, why I chose triathlon as my sport, because it was kind of a high bar to jump. Like, it is really complicated and has tons of equipment and is like, frankly, kind of annoying out of sports that a person could choose. But I think that's kind of what makes it cool, is that it is kind of like, I don't feel like disabled people should have to settle between like these pre-existing options. I think people should get to choose what makes them happy, whether it's the shoes or the wheelchair or the sport, and then figure out how that can be adjusted for them, rather than just having to accept like, oh, you're a wheelchair user, do you want to play basketball? Not that there's anything wrong with basketball, but I'm terrible at it. So that's what's wrong with it. One of the things that I was curious to ask you about that I feel like people don't talk about, like really don't talk about, even though it's so very true, is that everybody, as they age, will progress into disability. And I think like, if you say that to like an able-bodied person, I think they're like flustered and they're uncomfortable and they don't want to hear it. And fine. But as somebody who like really had to, come to terms with progressive disability, like, we're all going to be in that boat just in the future. Is there things that you would say to people that, to kind of help them through that time, or things that you wish you knew at the beginning of your journey?
Yeah. I think a lot of, like when I hear about that and like the elderly population and stuff, there's lots of different movements out there, like aging in place, the idea of adapting your environment. And I think those kind of things make a lot of sense, just to society. Like, I know a lot of kids, I coach about 20 paraswimmers right now, most of them quite young. And I know Halloween is always a thing because they can't just go up to a typical house and go trick-or-treating without somebody else having to go ring the door. Whereas if houses were just built with a ramp, it wouldn't make a difference. People could go over to their friends' houses and it wouldn't be a problem. People wouldn't have to plan ahead. And then as people age, they wouldn't have to move necessarily. It would just already be in place. And I think a lot of those things at a bigger society level would really help. Just kind of level the playing field of make everything accessible for everybody, because it's like that idea of like shoveling the ramp before the stairs, because if you shovel the ramp, everybody can use it. If you shovel the stairs, only some can. And I think that's a big thing, but I think a lot of it for me was finding people that I trust to communicate these kind of feelings with, be able to work with, just have this amazing team around me, whether that be family or friends, or in our situations, coaches and support staff that way. I think that's been really helpful, and finding things that I love and can adapt to what I want to do. So with swimming, obviously, I've been able to adapt that. I'm big into crocheting. I have 2 small businesses, but I couldn't hold a crochet hook anymore with my hands. So I started making ergonomic crochet hook handles. And it definitely takes a couple extra steps to adapt these things sometimes, but I think it's really worth it if something's important to you. Don't look at, it's hard not to, but try not to look at it as, oh, this is a negative, I can't do it anymore, I just have to throw it out the window and think of this as part of my past. But instead look at it as, oh, I might just have to change things. I might just have to adapt things. How can I make this still work? And I think having those people that can help you plan around, how can I make this still work? How can I still make this happen? I'm still able to do a lot of things that a few years ago I didn't know if I'd be able to. And just through adapting, working it out, I'm able to live the life I want to. And I think it's possible at any point to do that, but it does just take a little bit more planning and can be mentally tiring sometimes. But I think if something's important enough for you, then try to find a way that works, or try to find something that fills that hole instead. If you can't do a certain craft anymore, find something else that you can. If you can't do a sport, maybe find something else that will fill that spot so that you can still get the same benefits without having to actually like get rid of a part of your identity or your life.
I love to hear you talk about the way that you're like pivoting and making it work, and like so like aggressively in pursuit of like these things that make you happy. I had a conversation with someone recently who is like a bit older, and I was talking about riding bikes, and they were like, oh, like I'm just kind of not confident on a bike anymore because I worry that like I'm going to crash it. And then like, totally. I'm not going to bounce back in the same way that, I mean, obviously I didn't either. But like, like a younger person might. And fair enough, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, oh, why don't you try like one of the bikes with like the 3 wheels? Because then it's more stable in the back and then you can still ride a bike. And this person was like, oh, no. And I like, even like to say that to me, I'm like, I think it's kind of funny that you don't realize like how funny it is for you to say to a disabled person, like, I don't want any adaptation. It's embarrassing to have this mobility aid. And I was like, it's funny to me that like that you don't make this connection, that like every day I get up and get into my mobility aid and it gives me this like incredible quality of life. And I'm so happy. Like every time I buy a new piece of adaptive equipment, I'm like thrilled to be buying it, thrilled that it exists. Like, and it's funny that like people can be around that and still not really see how it translates to them. Like my bike has 3 wheels and I use it to race faster than a lot of like able-bodied person could ride their 2-wheeled bike or whatever. Like it's I think it's cool. I enjoy it. And I don't mean to like, I don't mean that other people need to think it's cool for me to think it's cool, but I think it's surprising how people can't, like how people can say like, and the same people can say like, it's so inspiring what you do, like even though you're disabled kind of is the way they get, but then they can't see like they themselves are also a little bit disabled and also are choosing not to do these things that they could because they're embarrassed because they don't want to look disabled. Like it's kind of a funny, like double-edged sword. And that's kind of why I brought it up, because I feel like people can see what you're doing and really actually do something in their life that would ultimately make them happier. And I would just hope that people would. Like, I would hope that people would be more interested in doing what makes them happy than they are concerned with how somebody else sees it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I know a lot of times at the pool, I swim with a club that's mostly able-bodied swimmers. And then we have probably about 15 on our competitive side for para swimmers and about 20 in our learn to swim. Like we have a lot. But a lot of times I'll offer to one of our able-bodied swimmers, I'm like, oh, like I have this tool that helps out with this. And all the time, oh no, well, I couldn't use that. So then they prefer to struggle instead. I'm like, well, like just use something that makes life easier. Like I don't want to like, I'm not gatekeeping anything. Like if there's a tool to make anything easier, whether you have a disability or not, like use the tool. And I think it's a very interesting mind shift of like, oh, I can't do that, or, oh, like, and all times my kids will like look at my chair and they're like, oh, it's really cool. Like, I'm like, sit in it, like try it out. Like, I don't mind at all. Like, and I had a little 3-year-old that was sitting in my chair and trying to wheel it. And I'm like, you know what? Like, if the parents are cool with it, I think it's great to expose people to this. And it's not an awful thing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. My chair allows me to go all over the world. I've done so many things in it. So I'm like, yeah, you know what? Try it out. Like, yeah, it is cool. It's purple and sparkly. Like, go for it.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, totally. I feel like as a person with a disability, in a lot of ways, like I experienced more freedom when I became disabled because I was forced to stop caring about, like, I was not an elite swimmer before. Like I had been a lifeguard growing up, which I won't say what that means about my swimming ability. But I wasn't a racer, right? And I wouldn't have joined a swim club. Like I wouldn't have just gone and signed up and been like, yeah, teach me how to race because I'm interested. And I was interested. Like I still would have liked it, disabled or not. And I think you sort of, for me anyway, when I became disabled, you have this kind of humbling experience where you're like, people are going to kind of watch everything I do no matter what. Like people are going to be interested in it, or like for different reasons. And I'm always going to be like drawing this attention. So I might as well just be doing what I want with this attention, rather than, you know, like if someone's going to watch me load groceries into my car, they might as well be watching me like go swimming in the ocean. Because they're going to think the same either way. And I might as well be doing what I enjoy. Yeah.
You might as well live life instead of trying to hide your whole time. Like that's not going to be fun. So yeah, I like that of if people are going to stare at you, then might as well do something cool with it.
Right, might as well do something interesting. You started, well, it sounds like you found para swimming first, but have you found any other para sports, or like are there other sports that are interesting to you?
Yeah, so para swimming has always been my main sport since I started in 2011 now. So it's always been my main sport, but I worked at Manitoba Wheelchair Sport for a summer. So I got to try out a few different sports there. I'm not a contact sport kind of person. So people running into me, I'm like, ooh, nope, backing it up. But I have found like different adaptive activities and stuff that I love. I now have a hand cycle, so I use that all the time. I love rowing. We figured out how to adapt weightlifting for me, so I can now deadlift from my knees. We kind of adapted a bunch of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think once I was in the para world, just knowing all these different opportunities out there and these different adaptive activities, like I've been rock climbing, I've got to do all these kind of different things that yeah, I wouldn't have experienced before, or I wouldn't have thought were possible until I saw somebody else like me do it. And I'm like, oh, hey, maybe we can make this work. Maybe we can adapt this. I think having those coaches that are knowledgeable in para, or at least willing to learn and willing to try out new things, I think just really opens up the world of, hey, what can we do? If I'm doing dryland with a whole group of athletes that don't have any disability, I know that we can adapt things for me. And it's really cool to be able to work side by side, and our movements are a little bit different, but we're getting the same workout in, just in our own way. And I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think like a lot of people, to me, the most helpful people when I've approached someone about parasport, I approached the executive director of Triathlon Manitoba when I was like, oh my gosh, I've been injured like 5 months, I think, maybe even less. And I was like, yeah, I want to do a triathlon. And I remember like prior to this, like giving myself this pep talk that's like, if they laugh, I'll do this. Yeah. If they like say no, I'll do that. Like preparing myself for all these like potential like negative responses. Mm-hmm. And then the person that I came in contact with, his name's Jared Spire, and I really feel like my success in parasport like originated from this moment of him being like, okay, I don't know how, but we'll figure it out. Yeah. I'm not going to lie to you and pretend like I can offer you this resource. I have no idea how you're going to do this. Yeah. But like, yeah. And like, it really just took that person to say yes. And then the rest we figured out. And I think like those people are just, to me, the freaking coolest, because it's really hard to say yes to something when you can't imagine it. Like when someone comes up to you and is like, hey, it's your job to support me doing this, but you're like, I have no idea how. Yeah. But I just think it's so cool when people have that kind of attitude of like openness to disability, that they're like, I'm not going to lie to you, I don't know how to do this, but I want to say yes. And we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is people just have to be like brave enough to say yes, like brave enough to figure it out, because it's not going to be the easiest to figure out sometimes. I've had like 5-year-olds come up to me that can't walk, can't sit up on their own, and they're like, hey, I want to go on the water slide. It's like, cool, let's figure out how we can do this. And I think it's at first I would have been a lot more unsure of being like asking the parents, like, is this okay? And like, I've worked with the swimmer long enough, I know it's a safe activity. So if it's safe and if it's something they want to do, then like, let's figure it out. And I think that's like such an important first step of identifying what you want to do, figuring out those people that can help you along the way, and then making it happen. Sometimes it'll take a little bit of figuring out, but yeah, I think those people are so key in making it happen.
You talk about risk, and I think that's really interesting because I feel like people have a different risk tolerance for disabled people. Mm-hmm. And I do not understand this, but I feel like it's so true that when you talk about something like anyone can get injured on the water slide, like they're probably going to be fine, but like, you know, people cut themselves on the water, like things happen, weird things happen on the waters and all kinds of places. And I feel like when you have this conversation about a disabled athlete, people are sometimes more uncomfortable or like more inclined to like try to make it more safe because the athlete is disabled. And I think it's funny and strange that people feel that way, because I think risk is risk. And I'm not trying to say like people should go out there and do these things that are like, you know, beyond their capabilities and that are unsafe. But at the same time, like, if a risk is reasonable for an able-bodied person, I think like that same level of risk can be reached for a disabled person. We should consider that normal, right? Mm-hmm. Like that, like I've crashed my bike sometimes. Yeah. Like it happens. Yeah. Or like I fall over like a lot of the time. Yeah. And like people who see that are so alarmed. Like if I'm like on the pullback and I'm like putting on my wetsuit pants and I fall over, people are like panicking, and I'm like, I fell from the ground to the ground. Like I'm fine. But I feel like that's another kind of place where I think we can like push the boundary a little bit to say like, is this risk really any higher for this disabled person, or are we just uncomfortable with it because they're disabled? Yeah, I think it really comes from some of those perceptions that like
I know I want to change throughout society, where like people typically either view people with disabilities as like a pity model or as like a protector, that like they're broken, that they need to be treated gentler, like as a child almost, or that they need to be treated as somebody that needs charity or needs like all this kind of stuff. And I think just treating people like people and seeing what they can do. And yeah, I think that like risk, yeah, it's the same as with anybody. Like you could get hurt the next day doing anything. And I've had the same kind of thing where one day in college, I leaned too far back in my chair and I flipped over. And all these nursing students were so worried, they were running over and trying to grab me. Meanwhile, my friends were like lying on the floor crying, laughing, because it's just, it is what it is. And they're like, yeah, Shelby just did that. Like, and I think it's just like, it really showed that they just saw me as another student. They didn't see me as, oh, I need to pity this person, or, oh, I need to bubble wrap her, protect her. It was just, I was their friend who wiped out in their chair. Just like if they fell over in their chair, I'd be doing the same thing once I knew they were okay. It's just treating them like people.
Yeah, I love that. I love my friends who like, I feel like there's like two categories of this, like friends who like can still like see the humor and treat you like a normal person when you're disabled. And then like the next level, which some of my friends have done in the past, which is like fully forget that I have a disability. So one time I was like walking with a friend and we were talking about going to this restaurant, and I was like, oh, like, and my friend was pregnant at the time. So it limits like the capacity of like the sketchy stuff we would normally do to get into inaccessible places. I'm like, let's keep this baby in there and not do anything too crazy. And so we were like choosing a restaurant, and I was like, oh, I think that one has a couple of stairs. And she turns to me and she's like, why are you so lazy? Oh my God. But I loved it because I feel like there's like a special kind of friend who is so not concerned with your disability that they would forget about it.
Yeah.
Like I was like, this really says a lot to me about our friendship in a positive way.
Yeah.
Though she was embarrassed, obviously.
Yeah. We had that at the store the one time where I was going in behind my brother, and my brother slammed the door on me, like whatever, just like joking around or didn't clear or whatever. And this lady came up. Yeah, exactly. He's my little brother. She came up and just started yelling at him, like, how dare you do this to this disabled girl and all this kind of stuff. Cole's looking around. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, she's my sister. Like, this is what siblings do. Like, it was so funny. And of course, I was not helpful at all. I'm like, yeah, Cole, like, why would you do that? Because, got to throw it back at him. But it was just like, it was funny to see that he really didn't see me as the fact that I had a disability. All the time his friends will ask, like, oh, what happened to your sister? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, she's Shelby. Like, and like, and I don't honestly know if he really remembers me much from before my disability. Like, he is younger than me and stuff, but I think it's just, he's been so used to it. And his basketball team actually got to play wheelchair basketball the one time, as a team, which is so cool and such a great way to like raise awareness. A bunch of the guys missed practice the next day because their arms were too sore. And he was and he's like, and he's like, how did these guys not know how to wheel a chair? Like, nobody can do a wheelie. Nobody knows how to do this. And I'm like, buddy, they wouldn't have stolen a chair since they were a little kid. Like, it's very interesting.
Like, you can't do a wheelie, but I love that your brother like thinks that's like a standard.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. He's like, well, like all the cousins, we race chairs. I'm like, yeah, because you guys take my chairs. Like,
like not everyone is in this situation, but I love that he thinks that's normal.
It's exactly.
So I have a selfish question for you, and it's about swimming.
Cool.
And it's about like something that I struggle with, and I'm curious like how I feel like this just applies to swimmers in general, but I have like a very distinct like love-hate relationship with a pace clock, because I feel like in my other sports, so I do triathlon, so swimming, hand cycling, and wheelchair racing, and in the other sports, there's like kind of like, I don't know, like a series of metrics that you use to judge whether you're feeling good. And like somehow, like if it's like bike for 2 minutes, like, like that 80% of your maximum or whatever, we have like a power meter and a cadence sensor and a speed. And like, I just feel like there's all these different ways to like kind of feel good about what you did.
Yeah.
But somehow in swimming, to me, it's like the pace clock is like, you're supposed to swim this fast and you either passed or you failed and you're great or you suck. And I'm trying to like step out of this mentality, but I'm curious, like as a swimmer, how do you manage that? Like in your training, how do you get what you want from pace times and not find them discouraging?
Yeah. So for my training, I actually do race pace training, which is a little bit different. So everything I do is basically at full pace all the time. So yeah, so I'll do a practice where it's like 30 50s all on a certain time. I'll get like 20 seconds rest, and it's just like go, go, go. And I think it's and like for us, how we typically do it is if you do like if you miss the time, then you fail a set and you have to take one off and you have to rest. And I think it's really interesting. Like you said, it can get quite discouraging. And I used to look at it as a very discouraging thing of like, oh, I made it. Oh, I failed, especially like those kind of wordage. It's a bit abrupt. And so I think for me, it's really come down to what have been the best parts in that single race. Like, even if I missed a part, even if I didn't do something right, was the turn good? Did I have my head in a better position? And I think having those little things, like we don't have the same measurements that you would have in triathlon, but we can use like stroke rate. We can use like distance per stroke. There are some of those kind of things. But I think a lot of times it's relying on my coach of what he saw that I could do better, what I felt that I wanted to change, and just making those little tweaks each time. So whether that's like making sure my head is down lower, or in my turns that I'm approaching faster or turning quicker, or any of those little things. And in swimming, we can kind of practice all that. And I'm sure it's the same with open water, where then once you're in the water, it's like, well, you can't get any feedback now. You just kind of go. Whereas in like basketball and stuff, you have those timeouts. You have those moments to kind of regroup with your coach and make those changes. So I think for us, it's a lot of that changing on the moment of like quick think back of like, oh, what do I need to change? What can I do better? And I try to always think of it as, even if I failed the time, it's not that I failed. It's not that I'm a failure. It's that that particular swim didn't meet the goal that I wanted to do. And how can I change this for the next one in order to make that happen? That makes sense.
Yeah. That's really helpful. That's really, I think it's like, it's good even just to hear someone say like that they can understand that feeling of like that this is kind of like a pass fail thing, or it can feel like that if you're not looking for other opportunities to say like improve this, or like realize it's because of this. So I feel like that's really helpful to like look at it instead of like an assessment of like whether you did well or poorly, an assessment of like, in this one I need to look at what skill resulted in me not hitting it, and in this one I need to look at maybe what skill resulted in me hitting it.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly cool. Yeah.
Swimming is kind of intense in the sense that like your races are quick.
Yeah.
Right. What is your shortest event, and how long does it take you to finish it?
Yeah, so my shortest race is 50 free, so it's 33 seconds typically from the time when the buzzer goes to when I hit the wall.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about how fast that is compared to how fast my 53 is. You're stressing me out. I'm just kidding. But that's so, cause I mean, we race and it takes like over an hour. And so like mentally, it's really different, right? Like how you handle like and digest the little pieces of what's going on in an hour. Whereas in 30 seconds, like, do you have time to think anything? Like what's going on in your head? No?
Yeah, no, like it's literally like, me and my coach always talk about the fact that like I plan it out ahead of time. We'll talk it out. What am I going to do? What's going to happen? And then I get on the block and I don't think from there. I just have to go, because if I dive in and I realize like, oh, hey, my start was not quite where I wanted, I need to adjust more, the race is already over by the time I've had those thoughts. You don't have time. Yeah.
Like I will notice if I'm thinking about something, like if I'm trying to make a decision, like if I'm like an A or B situation, I will slow down. No matter what I'm doing. Like I feel like there's just not enough space in my brain to like, maybe that's not normal, but to like do what I'm doing plus make a decision. Yeah. And so it's interesting to say that you sort of like pre-make them, right? Like you're like, at this point, I'll do this and then this and then this, and you just do it when it starts.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we literally just have the game plan of like, this is all of our steps. And like, if somebody's doing, say, a 400 free or something like that, then they would have more time to plan out, and you're able to strategize with pacing. But that's why I do race pace, because I don't have time to pace. I just got to go 100% right from the start. Try not to breathe and just go. And I think it's very like, it's an interesting situation where I don't have time to think. All the time my parents are like, oh, did you hear me cheer? I'm like, no. My brain was turned off and I just left.
I was thinking about you cheering. Like, oh my God. Yeah. Like, I actually do hear my parents on the course sometimes, but my parents really make me laugh because like my mom is like just such a loving person, and doesn't like triathlon doesn't like fully make sense to her. You know, like she understands it, you know, but like that, like she hasn't raced it, and just like that race awareness, like the things she says are just like I'll see her in the morning and she'll be like, your braids are so cute. And I'm like, yes, mom. Like, I love that this is what you care about. It's kind of nice to have like someone in your corner who's like just proud of you anyway, you know, like my mom, I think she's cried at every single one of my races. Aww. Like no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's so cute. Like it is nice to just like have someone in, because I feel like everybody else sort of like learns about your racing and like gets really technically into it. And it is really refreshing just to have one person around that's like, you're just the best.
Yeah, I'd agree. And like, I don't come from a swimming background. Like I come from a basketball family. And so my family has definitely like worked to learn about swimming and stuff. But yeah, it's the same kind of thing where like, they're just excited that like I did a race that I don't typically do. Like those are kind of the more things, or like I did a 400, which I don't do distance at all. And I actually counted the right amount of laps for like once in my life. Like those are the kind of things they get excited about, which is awesome. Like they love it when I win too. But I think it is cool to have like somebody celebrate those little things that like all the kids on our swim club, they'd be like, really, you couldn't count to 400? It's like, no, I couldn't. Like, yeah. So I love that. Yeah, same kind of thing. And my dad's actually gotten into swimming now too. He's joined our masters club with the swim club. So I think it's like really cool to have those moments of like talking about swimming. But at other times, I know that I just have their support no matter what. And they're going to be cheering for me whether I touch first or I touch last. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And I think like in those high pressure situations, like the games, it is nice to like think about like that big picture. Like I was really lucky. A lot of my friends were able to travel to Paris and actually come to the games. And I was like, when I was racing in my head, I'm like, I'm doing this for them. Like they came all the way here and spent all their money, and I want to like show them that I'm going to do a good race. And then as soon as I crossed the finish line, I was like, they don't care.
No.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, not they don't care. Like, they're happy for me to be happy, but they don't care how I do. Like, that's why they came here, you know?
They're there to support you through thick and thin.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's always like helpful to have that context of like, you can use these people as motivation, but at the end of the day, like your people love you. Like, it's not because you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that was like a realization that I took from the games is to approach sport more like that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Like I'm hoping to compete in 2028 and trying to bring more of that. I want to see if I can have like similarly good results with like a mindset that's like a little bit less pressure.
Yeah. Just have fun with it. Yeah.
Do you have any goals for 2028 or for like your next kind of training blocks, like anything that you're like, oh, I'm trying to either like improve in this way or like have this result or do it, you know, differently?
I think for this games, like, cause I had Tokyo as well, and Tokyo was a really hard experience, honestly. Plus like it was COVID, there was lockdown, it was a whole lot going on. And so I think this time I just really tried to enjoy it, take it all in, just really embrace all the elements. And I think there are some fine tuning things that, me and my coach are working on for training and all these kind of things. We have lots of opportunities. So looking for like, we have 4 years till the next Paralympics. And it's so weird to like plan out your life 4 years in advance all the time. And so what work am I doing right now? Because I only took 3 weeks off after Paris. Like I took 3 weeks off and then, and then I was back in the water. So this year we've kind of been focusing on doing some off events, like trying some other things, and just really enjoying being in the water and playing around with different things, because after this year, we still have 3 more years to prepare. So I think we're just kind of taking this year as like a debrief, not so much that it's like a chill year, because we do have world championships in Singapore next September and I want to do well, but at the same time just like having that like no pressure year of like we can try out some different things. I've done some fly like events that I never do, so it's been kind of cool to try out different like muscle groups, doing different things, playing around with training, and just kind of having fun with it and getting back to like the roots of the joy of sport without like only doing 2 events, focusing on those for years in advance.
I feel like it's really cool the way that you express that balance, because I think when you say as an athlete, like, I want to be more chill about this, people think it means you're like training less, and that's like not really ever the case.
But I think there is so much that goes into like the mentality around it. That's like the purpose is a little bit different.
Yes.
Like I felt like pre-games, everything was so specific. And like every time you would do a workout, you would be like, I need to hit this pace to demonstrate that in the games, I'm going to hit this pace and it's going to be like this. And I feel like it is so nice in this period. This is my first time like going to the games and then like starting a cycle again. So I'm super like green and new to this. But I am really like getting a lot of joy out of that same thing, out of being like, I am still training just as hard, but with like a different, like with more of like a curiosity about what that means in terms of the metrics, rather than like this pressure that it has to be a certain way. And I have this theory, and it'll be interesting in 4 years to see if I'm like, oh my God, what was I talking about? Or if I still have this theory, but I honestly feel like I will do better. Like, I think I will perform better in an environment where I'm like a little bit less intense. And so I'm interested to see how this goes. And I feel like I'm really blessed in that I made a lot of friends over like my first cycle, like in my own sport. And so now, like it used to feel like going to race, like I was like intimidated by everyone. Like everyone was like the scariest women I've ever met. And I was like out of place and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like going to be in their way or like, you know, like just not really feeling like I belong. And now I'm like, how cool is it that I get to like travel around the world to like meet up with my friends to try to beat them in a triathlon? Like, this is hilarious. And I'm interested to see if that makes the results different or just the process more enjoyable. This has been really fun. I'm so glad we got to catch up. I feel like we should catch up more often. I'm like very interested in like everything that you have to say about sport and just being a human in general. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to More Than Medals. I love the opportunity to share Shelby's story with you. I think we can learn so much from her resilience and the way that she adapts to all that life throws at her. I'm so proud of all that Shelby's accomplished, and if you want to continue to follow along her journey in swimming, you can do so on her Instagram page. It's always great to have more people rooting for these athletes as they pursue their Paralympic dreams and their dreams beyond sport.